Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing great and enjoyed these stories. Make sure you check out my Patreon if you want to support my channel or get early access to my stories. And make sure you check out my podcast, which is in the description also. I have a quick message before today's story starts, so I'd like to share this. I think that it's incredibly important to have goals and things that you're working towards. As the old saying goes, an idle mind's the devil's playground. So if you're somebody who's liable to not feel so great if you're on your own for too long, or if you're looking for jobs and things like that, then make sure that you always have goals and things you're working towards. At least for myself, I know that it's something really important and it really helps me with everything. So I hope that can help some people. I hope you're all doing great and enjoyed these stories. I'll speak to you all soon. So I was relaxing in a cabin that my family owned. I'd been out there for a while on my own, well, weeks to be honest. I kept hearing a branch snapping though. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from for hours, until eventually, for some reason I look up, and I can see a guy sitting up in a tree staring at me, holding a branch. I fled from there, never figured out exactly who he was or why he was up there. So I, a 13-year-old male, and a couple of friends, let's call them EDZS and G, went exploring this barn last year. It is creepy. We found 2 knives, one old working toy in the attic, and some other weird stuff. First time, nothing too weird, but it gives me the creeps. Next time, last summer at the start of autumn, my 2 friends E and D went to check it out and see what they could do. It didn't go as planned. They saw a white man-like creature in the barn and one outside who was actually spying from the bush. They ran for their bikes and they watched the creature do some, I don't know what, not really normal activity. Now for the second encounter, it was like around 2 weeks ago since I got injured mid-autumn and basically couldn't do anything during the winter. We went there to do random stuff and mess around like 13-year-olds do and search the barn. Things were a little misplaced, nothing new. After that, we go to check out the nearby forest at about 6 PM, and it's dark outside now. We go by the forest and look inside and we hear something. Some gibberish, I don't know. We watch because we're obviously scared and it creeps me out to see some white creatures running around. We ran like 40 meters away and watched. Something came out of there and shouted. Don't know if we should go back or explore or not. Does anyone know anything similar happening elsewhere? One summer, my boyfriend and I drove up and down California and just slept in the bed of his truck. One day, we went to the Emerald Pools near Lake Tahoe. We ended up crashing near a public campground nearby. There was maybe about one other person or so, as well as a campground host. In the middle of the night, I woke up and had a weird feeling. I sat up and realized that the passenger side of the door had suddenly swung open. Now we'd locked ourselves in, and it shouldn't have been able to do that. So we quickly close it and go asleep, but I'm creeped out for the rest of the night and I'm not able to sleep at all. It was literally like somebody swung the door open, but nobody had touched it, and it was locked. While stationed in a protected forest, I remembered sitting up with a few of my buddies having some coffees when we saw somebody wave to us, turn and literally walk through a tree, then literally disappear only moments after. None of us can explain what happened. Now for a little bit of a backstory, I've always had weird experiences, be it ghosts or strange animals. It just always seemed to follow me and my family. We had just moved into an old farmhouse just off the main road, The house comes with 88 acres of land, and only 4 people live on or near the land, including us. When we first moved in, nothing abnormal happened. It was just a small out of the way home that seemed like a new start for all of us. After about a month of us living here, we started hearing strange noises outside at night, but nothing serious. One night, we decided to have a fire and get drunk, while me and a few other guys that were there that night decided to do some night fishing. So we're fishing in the pond basically, and we started to hear some screaming off in the woods. We just think that it's one of the girls back at the house, so we head back on our way and started noticing that there's no more sounds. No sounds of nature, no birds, no crickets, nothing, so we stop to listen. As we do this, we hear the sounds of chains rushing towards us as it gets maybe 15 feet in front of us. I point a gun at where I think the sound has stopped, and fire is shot into the ground a couple of inches from it. After a minute passes, the chains rush to the house, but nothing happened. After that, we all go inside and start heading to bed. We all then hear a female scream again, but behind it, there was a deep distorted laugh. After that, nothing happened until 3 weeks later, me and my dad go fishing out at the pond late in the afternoon. As it inches closer to dusk, we notice 3 pale white animals on the opposite side of the pond, but as soon as we notice the animals, we realise that they're running on all fours, but in a weird way, and they jump up on their hind legs and jump about 8 feet into a tree and then hop away from tree to tree. As we see this, we decide to head back home, but on the way we hear the trees start rustling, and it keeps getting closer and closer until we just get to the house and lock the doors. I decide to set up cams in the woods and around the house. At first I don't get anything, just deer and wolves, until on a night cam close to the house, I realise that there's a camera that's moved on its own. Nothing really came of that one night, however. After a long day of working, I decide to play a video game with some friends. It's about 11 at night and I hear 2 taps, but I ignore them thinking it's a game. It continues till 2 in the morning, periodically every 5 minutes or so. 2 consecutive taps are happening. I finally took off my headphones and hear it at my window, and when I look, I see orange eyes about 7 feet off the ground. After 2 minutes of staring at each other, it moves closer to the window and smiled at me with blood-stained daggers for teeth. Its face looks like a pale wolf's face with some decay on the sides of its neck and head. After doing this, it backs away and leaves. Now every night, right around that time, something weird happens like the sounds. I don't know what it could be. I'm always hearing this horrifying laugh like some kind of demented hyena or something. I'll let you guys know if anything else happens, I just can't figure out what this is. I currently work as a park ranger, and you do get some odd things happening, but I'm not somebody who's been blessed with a terrible experience. I say blessed sarcastically here. However, I did have some strange things happening to me when I was younger, and long before I ever took up this occupation. Let me take you back to my childhood. My father was somebody who went hunting often. I can remember so many nights up in the tree stands with my dad. These are really some of the best times that I ever had in my life. Even now, from time to time, I find myself reminiscing and looking back on them, just thinking of how great it was. I know not everybody has the ability to experience things like this, so it was something that I'm truly grateful for. I remember while we're up there one time, there's a really weird smell that comes. It was kind of like a really foul smell, like something was rotten. My dad's pretty convinced that an animal's died around here, and he says, "You know what that means, son? We're gonna find something. Some animal's gonna come past it and we're gonna get it." I was really excited. My dad has a rifle in its case, so he had a really expensive one. I can't remember exactly what gun he had though, but it was a pretty cool one, just know that. So we're up there for a while and not too much is happening. To be honest, I think either the smell gone or we got used to it, because I can't remember smelling it much more. We wait for a while here, then I see something. There's some kind of movement up ahead. I go to wake up my dad, worried that a person's come, but he's fast asleep. I don't think too much of it and decide to fall asleep again. Now, you're not really supposed to sleep up here, but we were both really tired from the hike, so I thought it was only going to be like it for a little while. Just as I fall asleep, I can see what appears to be two people standing next to each other watching us where we are. I thought, well, maybe they're other hunters, and I just had the benefit of the doubt in my head that it was all okay. So I fall asleep, and I hear a really strange sound. It sounds like constant tapping, like somebody was trying to break a lock. I'm really disorientated when I woken up, and I actually thought that I was at home, so I thought we were being robbed in the downstairs area of our house. You know when you're not used to sleeping somewhere and it takes you a few seconds to figure out where you are when you wake up? Well, it was just like that, and it takes me a while to get used to this. However, after not too long, I quickly come back to my senses, and I look out, and I can see a figure walking around very slowly in the distance. It was weird though, it looked like it was moving in slow motion. This person had a massive torso but quite skinny arms, just kind of lumbering around. It looks almost like they're injured, and I say, Dad, wake up. Dad, I think someone's trying to rob us. I was still a little bit hazy. My dad says, no son, it's nothing, just go back to sleep. I say, Dad, yeah, there's definitely something there. But he says, no son, just go back to sleep, it's fine. Now, I don't know what was wrong with my dad. He just seemed very tired and dismissive of everything I was saying. Maybe it was because of my age at the time that he didn't really believe me or whatever, but he decides to go to sleep again, and eventually I do the same. Now, I slept really well that night. I think it was because I'd been woken up a few more times than my dad had, so I didn't really get into a good circadian rhythm. Now, when I do wake up, I see my dad outside looking around. I say, Dad, what's wrong? And I go down off of the stand. I feel $1 million because of how I slept. My dad looks confused. I say, what's wrong? And he says, well, there's something weird here. The animals that we caught and killed, they've all long gone, and I can't figure out where. It was quite weird because then we noticed something really odd. There was a pile of bones, but they were bone dry. It was almost like somebody had just really perfectly preserved the bones, which appeared to be like the animals that my dad had caught earlier, and just left them in a small neat pile. There was also the smell again, which was even worse than before. I had a look around for a while on my own to try and figure out if there was an animal that had died. I don't know, maybe a bear or something crazy like that, but there was nothing. I remember seeing a look of concern in my dad's face. I've never really seen this before. I've always looked up to my dad as being this very brave person, but on this particular day, he didn't look so confident. I don't know what it is. So then we head back. Now, my dad decides to take a walk by the water of the lake near where we are. He usually does this if he's stressed and that he wants to just have a walk and trying to relax and forget about everything. I start questioning my dad, and he says, I'm sorry, I just don't know what it was. It's clear that he's definitely concerned, but he doesn't want to tell me what it was. Now, the place we are actually looks beautiful. If any of you have ever played Halo before and went to the beaches there on the mongooses or the warthogs, you'll know what I mean. Where it's got kind of like the lovely rock formation that leads to the ocean. It was just like that up here. I'm actually having a really good time, but I realised the smell was very distinct that I smelt earlier, and it's again like something that I've never smelt before. There were some other people here and someone that my dad was actually friends with who had some dogs and stuff. The guy then says to my dad that he doesn't know why, but the dogs are acting really weird. He said he's never seen them act like it before. I think my dad's going to say about what he saw and what happened, but he doesn't really say anything. He just turns to his friend and said, "Well, be careful out there, buddy." And they shook hands and just started talking about other things. The other kid there wanted to play with me, but he was a bit younger and I wasn't in the mood for it. I could sense something could happen that hadn't before to my dad, and I didn't necessarily sense danger from it. I just felt like it was a bit surreal, because I'd just gone from that relatively scary experience to looking out on a beautiful water formation, and it did actually relax me. The thing was, we had a few more days where we needed to remain here. Our original plan was to spend quite a while out here and just go back every so often to get supplies. That wasn't an issue. I decided to explore the rock formation a bit more on my own. It was quite sunny now, and actually annoying because I didn't have my hat with me. I realised that I've lost my camouflage hat. I was pretty crushed by this because I loved those things, but that was fine. I was now looking for crabs and other things, and I noticed some weird shells. That's when I noticed that one of the dogs starts going crazy. It just wouldn't stop barking. The owner's constantly calling his name, but he doesn't respond, so he has to put him back onto a leash. Again, I think this is quite a weird thing, because I've not seen this dog behaving like this before. And that's when I hear it. Some kind of terrifying crackling laugh, or maybe howl, very deep in nature, and it makes everything stop. All the animals, including the birds, seemed to just stop in their place at the sound. It was like they knew something was up, and we didn't. Or at least we didn't know the scale of it. My dad and his friend just looked at each other and agreed it was weird, like maybe a bear or something, but I think in his mind he knew it wasn't a bear, being quite experienced out here. I was quite scared of it being a bear, but luckily we're armed and our guns can take on bears, luckily. But I didn't really want to put it to the test. My dad's friend decides to get out of there with the dog spooked, and now it's just me and my dad out here. We spent a while actually along the coast just exploring before deciding to eventually head back again. I asked my dad, "What do you think that thing was?" And he says, "Probably nothing," seeming much more calm now. I think in my head, hold on, why are you telling me that now? You looked so scared earlier. That's weird. But I guess my dad was a bit arrogant, and I thought, well, we're probably safe out here. So we start heading back to our camp again. We're just eating some food, so our bellies are full, and I guess that made us feel better. But I couldn't figure out why my dad wasn't too worried. I mean, if there was a bear, we didn't want to be out here with it. We'd probably win the fight, but who wants to test that? It was strange. As we are walking, and we now transition from kind of the beachy setting almost back into the woods, there was that strange smell once more. It was almost like every so often you get peppered with it. The thing was, this time it almost made me feel lightheaded. I can't be certain it was because of the smell, but it was definitely odd. But we continued on. My dad said that he wants to actually go to another stand that he knows about now. I asked him, "What do you think that is?" and he says, "Well, son, there's a lot of things we know about in this world and out in nature. There's a lot of things that we don't know. We're only a part of this, not above it." Even now I think of that saying, actually. It's really interesting. Though I couldn't entirely grasp the depth of it at the time. So we're heading back, and every so often I do get the feeling like we're not alone out here. Yes, there could have been other hunters and things, but I didn't think that was too realistic. I keep looking over at the water in the lake every so often. I then see it though. Once more, someone's there. It's just like the figure I'd seen before. My dad stares at it for a while, struggling to see it. I say, "Dad, get the binoculars quick." He can't find them. We've left them in the stand, which is really annoying. I said, "We'll just use a rifle." "No." "Come on, Dad, just do it. We're going to figure out what this is now." My dad refuses once again, saying, "No, we don't know who that is. I'm not going to aim the rifle at anyone." He had a really good point, but I don't understand why he couldn't have just took the scope off or something to have a look at this thing. He does seem to keep the gun pointed towards it though, which I thought again is really odd. Now it's there for a while just staring at us. It kind of looks like a lost person on the beach, very far away, but potentially looking in our direction or that of the ocean. It's impossible to tell because of the distance between us, but it was definitely looking somewhere. Now we continue on, and that's when we start to notice some weird things. There are some trees which are pushed down which should never have been. It's not all the time, just every so often. At first I think maybe it was a lightning strike or something, but upon closer investigation I realised that there's no burn marks at all. I'm not sure if we should be out here, but for whatever reason my dad decides to persist that we need to get back to the other stand. We're walking for what feels like an eternity and eventually stop for a little while just to have a break. It's while doing this that I actually calm down a bit further, and we walk onto a little wooden part which is man-made, which made me feel a lot better. We've set up our food now, and we have another meal. I seem to be especially hungry. I think it's probably because I was more nervous than I realised, and that might have been burning up a lot of energy. But everything felt different here. It felt like we were going to a completely foreign land, like we just moved to a completely different area of the forest. Almost like somebody just cut and pasted a different terranium into here. The trees all seem to be somewhat haunted looking, not full of life like the other ones, but seeing those wooden paths made me feel more confident. And with this we get to the other stand, and we head up in there. My dad lets me go first. He then says that he's going to look around for a while to try and scout out anything for us to hunt. I say good idea, Dad. He leaves me there and I actually have a rifle too now. He didn't often trust me with one, but in this situation he did. We've got two, both which go into the same case. My dad always carried it because it was quite heavy. I was pretty good with it actually and spent lots of time at ranges and places like that which were privately owned, so I really honed my skills in. I knew how to operate it safely, but this was a big thing. I remembered staring at the gun with wide eyes thinking, wow, I don't want to let my dad down. I put it onto its safety mode and just sat there quite peacefully for a while. I remembered that after not too long I drifted off to sleep again. I mean, I didn't realise how tired I could get so easily, but this was different for me. It was honestly like my body was put under a spell or something. Now while up here, I notice a strange screamy sound again. It jolts me awake and I try and focus my eyes on what it was. I shouldn't have done it, but I grabbed the rifle and load up a round. Now, I'm looking through the scope trying to see what it was. I don't actually have my hand towards the trigger though. I know this is dangerous and stupid, but I was quite young, so I didn't really care. Then, just through the edge of my sights, I can see something standing making this horrible howling sound. It appears to be standing over the corpse of some kind of animal, and I'm certain that I can see blood dripping down off of it. Every so often, it would stop making the sound where it appeared to be eaten, but I can't be 100% sure. I say, Dad? Dad? And I can't find my dad. Then, I hear it, a ping, a loud bang. The rifle's gone off. God, I think, as I drop the gun in front of myself, then quickly grab it again. I quickly checked to see if the rounds went off, but it hasn't. It wasn't my own. Then, I realise that it's my dad's shot around. I say, Dad, Dad. I don't hear any response, so I start panicking, thinking it's somebody else. I look up towards wherever that creature is and there's nothing there. I then see my dad come in. He's pointing his rifle in that direction the whole time and eventually makes it up into the stand. I say, Dad, where did you go? What happened? He says, well, I thought someone was following us, so I decided to have a scout around. Eventually I saw it. Some kind of, I don't know what it was, standing over an animal. Tried to hit it, but I missed. I now realise that they were warning shots, so Whatever it is now long gone, but it was definitely weird. I keep asking my dad again and again, can we go and check it out please? I really want to see what it is, but my dad refuses. He actually puts up the barrier on the stand now. We're able to use it to rest our guns on though, which is good. He then explains that he doesn't know what's happening in the woods and that he wants us to go a bit sooner than normal. I was quite hesitant because I love these times, but I understood. He then said, why did you put a round in? And I explained that I saw the thing too. He said, what do you think it was, son? And I say, I don't know, but it was eating something. And that's what my dad agrees with too. So we settle in for the night. When I wake up, I can see my dad looks a bit restless. He was never one who slept for very long, and I can see he's a bit tired today. I asked him why is he sleepy, and he said he couldn't sleep well, but I think that he was just up on guard. So now we head out again towards where the water is, just to wash off our things and whatnot, and just to relax a little bit. After not long of being down there, we bump into another person. This person looks quite weird though. He isn't dressed normally. He's kind of dressed like how the folks that live out of nature on their own do. He's got some kind of wooden tent, whatever it is, set up near the water on the rocks. I go over and try and speak to him and ask has he seen anything, and he says, yeah, there's weird things out here, man. There's all kind of squatches and everything. They don't know about it, man. I felt nervous immediately. He's definitely a weird one. And my dad comes over and starts trying to talk to him. The guy just says over and over again and again, you gotta watch yourself, man. There's things out there. There's things out there. My dad says, where are you from and how long have you been out here? And he says he doesn't know. It's clear this guy hasn't come into contact with people for quite a long time. He was probably the strangest fellow that I'd met in my life up to that point, and it felt weird. Again, the atmosphere seemed to change as we come over to the water. He was really weird looking, and my dad takes me away from him. We cut our little respite short and start walking along the shoreline. I'm actually looking for crabs and things again because I want to eat one, but there are none. My dad starts laughing and I do, saying about how weird that guy seemed to be. It's really like that guy had just come out of the middle of nowhere and just appeared, almost like he was dropped there by a helicopter or something and hadn't seen normal people for years. It was weird. I then asked my dad, do you think he saw the same thing we did? But he says, I don't know, I think he's seen everything, but it's not real. That was the only time I started to settle down really on this trip. We started to wonder if maybe that guy was dressing up in some kind of weird animal suit and acted strange out there. I think my dad was more worried that he potentially shot near a person, but I don't know. We then come up to another part where the forest starts. We're going to head back to the original stand now. It looks very halo-y again, like I said before, but it looks kind of cool. After not too long, we start heading back into the forest once more. Okay, I go on and on though about my dad, that I want to go back and see what that thing was. Come on, let's go and figure out what it was, Dad. Don't you want to see what it was? I keep on persisting like that annoying child, trying to just figure out exactly what that animal was. Who knows what it could have been, but my dad says no, we're not gonna go. I was annoyed because the direction that we're heading basically takes us really far away from it, and I don't want that. But my dad just refuses, actually getting annoyed now, and I said, alright, fine, just because you don't want to solve the mystery. I think my dad's mindset was more survival and protective, but mine was more like that of a young person that I was. So just trying to investigate everything and just see what was truly out there. Now we continue on. The sun's shining quite nicely, but the trees are luckily providing lots of shade for us at this point. So it's very nice to be out there in the woods and nature. My dad actually looks like he was losing some kind of weight, so I think that's a pretty good sign that he was as nervous as anybody at that point. So he keeps on going, and eventually we get nearer to the stand, And that's when we hear it. A very loud scream. This one is very classical of what you'd expect from a large animal, but it doesn't sound like a bear. So that leaves me with the question, what could it have been if it wasn't a bear? What could have been making such a loud sound out there, really in the middle of nowhere? I don't know. But we keep going once more. After about 5 or so minutes, we come up to where the stand is, and the place looks trashed at the bottom. My dad seems annoyed, saying, "God, what are these other hunters doing? You're not supposed to trash it like this. No one is." But that's when it gets weird. There are some markings on the trees, like something with large claws has had a go at it. Now it seems like somebody's really had a chance to hack down the tree. Maybe Wolverine, I don't know. That's honestly what it appears like. We think this is really weird because there's no signs of trash or anything that would make it apparent or obvious that a person has actually been here. It's really bizarre to see. I even had a scout round myself trying to look for something or signs of anybody else being out here. I thought maybe somebody gone for a walk and was getting annoyed that they couldn't use the stand or something. But it's weird. I remembered faintly thinking I could smell that smell again, but I seem to be completely used to it now, so I guess I was kind of noseblind to it if it was actually there. My dad decides to do some exploring though and tells me once again to wait up in the stand, gives me some snacks to eat and hands me a rifle. Wow, this is so cool, I think to myself. I'm mesmerised once again, where I was being trusted with the gun. Again, something that seldom happened for me, so things are looking up a bit now. I remembered looking at the thing, holding it, and just having to play around, trying to remember everything, and I started practicing reloading quickly. There wasn't much else I could do, so that's what I'm doing time and time again. Then, I suddenly stop. I had a feeling that I should stop now, and just wait for a few seconds. I hold my breath as I hear some kind of movement. I can't hear much else. It doesn't sound like my dad. The movement is coming through the trees and seemingly getting closer and closer to where I am up in that stand. I hold my breath now. It's really starting to get dark. Since when did it get dark so quickly? Why is it so dark here? I think to myself as I try and figure out what's going to happen next. My hands are now trembling as I get the rifle ready to shoot whoever's coming. Then I hear a loud sigh and sneeze. The sneeze was loud enough to make me jump. It's my dad. My dad has the loudest sneeze in the world, so I knew it was definitely him. I then swear and tell my dad off for making me jump. I say, "Why were you being so quiet?" He says, "I just have a feeling that there's something else here." He says, "You weren't going to shoot me, were you, as a joke?" And I said, "No, of course not, but my god, I probably wasn't far away from it." It's something I'm kind of ashamed of now. I let my fear take over, but how could I not in that moment? My dad eventually comes up in the stand and he has some chocolate with him. I immediately forget about everything and start munching on the chocolate. I think my dad's maybe trotting some kind of animal remains, and we do look around for a bit. I'm trying to see if I've got it on my shoes, but I don't, and my dad doesn't. It's a really bad smell. This is different from the one we had before. As the night falls this time, a mist settles, making it look like it's kind of from a different time of the year to what we were. I haven't seen mist like it before too. Maybe that's why the smell was carrying so far. Maybe animals were dying and we didn't know why. They seemed to be dying all around us. It was weird. Well, I didn't dwell on this for too long. I eventually finished the chocolate and we decided to settle in for the night once more. We're up for hours and we do not see anything whatsoever. It's really annoying because we're going to have to come back empty-handed. I don't understand where all the animals went that my dad found earlier. They seem to have just vanished. It's really odd. We decide that when we're going to go to sleep that we should put the tarp up this time. It's something that we rarely did, but it was a bit more cold now, so it felt better that way, and we do so, and we settle in for the night. Now, I'm awoken by rattling on the side of the tarp. That's bizarre. For a few seconds I thought it was my dad, but I looked to my left and my dad's up, aiming the rifle. Now, panic sets in, and my dad says, "Don't move a muscle," in a hushed tone. Something is now sniffing the outside of the tarp, trying to get in. What's crazy is it sounds like it goes to the outside of where we are. We're up a tree. How on earth could that thing have got on the other side? It would have meant this thing's impossibly tall or has freakishly long arms, as we hear the odd tap on the side, sometimes more aggressive. There was one point where part of the wood actually bent in towards us, then relaxed again. I thought the whole thing was about to come down. This continues on, and I grab my rifle too and start aiming it too. Now this goes on for at least 3 minutes, where something is trying to get into where we are. And then, suddenly, it just stops. We hear the sound of something going down from the ladder and the side of the tree. It hits the ground, and then we don't hear anything. That's the weird part. We can't figure out what direction this went in. My dad then slowly peeks down and around from the tarp. He slowly aims it from the left and then to the right. I can see that he's sweating a lot now. He says, "Son, wait here." I say, "Dad, no, you're crazy." He says, "Son, stop. I'm not actually going out." I thought that he was going to get out, but he's just putting his head out basically. I decide to aim my rifle in the opposite direction. I don't know what that thing was. The smell is absolutely appalling at this point. It smelled like 1,000 dead things rolled into the size of a bathtub had just been dropped on top of our stand. That's when we realise there's blood dripping from the top of it. At first I'm worried it's my dad, but I realise it's not him. I notice it's not myself too, but it's kind of a dark colour. It's not like any other blood that I've seen before. Luckily none of it gets on us. Then my dad slowly gets down. He has a look around and I go to do the same, but he sends me back up. He then says, "Son, grab your stuff." I start to collect everything together and I slowly walk down the steps in the moonlight. It looks like the tree's been destroyed. It literally looks like Wolverines climbed up the side of it. But there's something which is dead, clearly, on the top of our stand. You can see maybe a deer's leg or something covered in blood. You can see its own blood, but then another much darker kind next to it. It's hard to say because we're in the moonlight, but I don't know what this thing is. My dad then says, "Come," and he tells me to lead the way. I can't believe he's trusting me out of here, but he's telling me basically to head back to where safety is, back to the main area. He's going to cover behind us, and we start walking. At first I'm going slow, but my dad says, "Son, you've got to go quick here." He didn't have to tell me twice as I pick up the pace myself. We start going now, back to back. We're walking for a long time. The smell doesn't seem to leave us though, which is especially odd. I hear a strange echoey voice too every so often. It's very faint, but it sounds like a wounded animal, kind of making some kind of cries as it slowly passes away. It's really haunting, especially with just the moonlight here, but eventually it gets brighter and brighter, and we continue like this for literally hours. Neither of us really said much. I turned into a soldier on a mission now. My arms are getting tired though from holding the rifle, and eventually I put it down for a second and my dad picks it up, putting it in the case and shouldering it. He's still got his one. He obviously felt a lot more safer now at this point, as we keep making our way through the woods. We're doing this forever when eventually my dad says okay, and puts the rifle back. He's got both of them in the same case now. He says we can't be out here pointing rifles around in case anybody else comes. And we walk for probably another 3 or so hours. We've literally been walking for miles and miles now, and we're slowly getting closer and closer to where we can get the rest of the way home. We eventually get back to my dad's car and we throw everything in. I somehow knew not to say anything to my dad, and he slowly starts up the car and we head home in silence. We have since spoke about the incident many times, and both of our stories of what happened match up exactly. Even the drawings of what we both saw are basically identical. Now, my dad made me promise not to tell anybody else about what had happened, and I didn't really for a long time. Neither of us could figure out what happened to us this day. The closest thing that either of us can think of is if it was some kind of deranged bear or Sasquatch, but the bear theory doesn't seem to make sense. They're not really known for the area that we went in, and I don't see how it could have put something on top of our stand like that. I don't know what it is. Sometimes when I fall asleep and hear a loud sound, it really takes me back to that moment. I don't like it. Growing up, I'd spent much of my life playing outside with my friends. This is in the days before you had video games and things like that, so it was pretty normal to make your own fun. All I'd have to do is take my bike, and after riding for about an hour or so, I'd be with my friends. I know that sounds like a long time, but I lived out in the backwoods, miles away from cars, so it wasn't really dangerous and it didn't feel so long because you're out in the woods. Now, later in my career, I become a park ranger, so I kind of got used to weird people and weird situations, but this is something that I couldn't explain from my childhood. Now, this actually comes from a number of things that happened to me, which all led to one specific event. So let me begin. So, I was playing out with my friends on one particular day, and one of my friends swears that he's seen a house out in the woods, deep in the middle of nowhere, but he knows exactly where it is. And he says, "God, there's a woman that haunts it and it's so scary. I really need you guys to see it." Now, we knew he wasn't making it up because when his brother came back from vacation, he was also saying the same thing. So one day we set out to find this. We had our bikes with us originally, but had to quickly dismount them. We decided to leave them because we knew it was going to be too difficult to proceed. There were rocks and things everywhere, so it was going to be really a headache to travel with them, so we decided not to. Now, we do notice some people further up also on bikes, and one, we have no idea how that they could have been on bikes out here because of how rough the terrain is, and two, we've seldom seen people here, so we thought it was a pretty bizarre thing, but we don't think too much of it and continue on. Now, funnily, this friend almost immediately gets lost and can't figure out where it is. He's basically adamant to not give up on trying to find it, but he doesn't really have a clue of where he's going. The nature's very nice though, but we're on quite a narrow path which is quite sheer. If you fell, you wouldn't really break anything, but you definitely get hurt. I've actually had the honour of falling in once and it wasn't fun. I ended up getting quite a lot of cuts and things and messed up some of my clothes, which was quite annoying. Now, after not too long, my friend finally gives up and says that we're not going to find this place. I say yeah, that's fine, and we decide to start heading back. Now, I kid you not, just as we've started to turn around, we hear a really deep banshee type scream, one that echoes off the surrounding hills. It was far too loud to be a person, At the very least, it would have been a large animal, but upon listening to the scream over the 2 seconds it lasted, you could hear some distinct words being spoken, and that was to get out. It's very hard to really figure out exactly what this voice was saying because I had so much adrenaline that I just couldn't focus on what I was hearing. But I look at my friends, and my friend who then led us out there confirmed that yes, he actually heard the same thing. Now we're panicking. As you can imagine, being young kids, we basically scream too and sprint out in the opposite direction. The best part about this is that we don't really know where we're going, and we ended up getting more lost in the woods. Now, I ended up getting really bad because it starts to get dark, and one, I don't want to lose my bike. My parents have only just got me it, and growing up I really didn't have much money. So if I lost a bike it was going to be a big thing, but yeah, I really couldn't find it, and that was quite worrying. And two, I didn't want to be out here in the dark with the demon. And my parents were going to kill me if I wasn't back in time. Filled with more rage now, I start strutting around trying my very best to find where the bikes could be, and thankfully we found them. Now we all split off in our different directions, and none of us really say anything. We're just rushing to try and get back home. I've never pedalled so hard in my life because I was absolutely convinced that the demon thing was going to chase after me. I know now it could have just been a person out there, or maybe a large animal. That was probably the biggest threat, but I guess back then you really don't think like that. So I was pretty concerned by this, and I well and truly didn't feel comfortable. I just knew that I had to find my way home safely. So I get in and I get banned from being on my bike for a while, which was really annoying. I didn't really explain what had happened to my parents. I knew I was going to be grounded, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be a lot worse for me if I say what's actually happened. I know looking back on it now, I should have probably explained because it could have been a really dangerous situation. Who knows what was out there that day? Well, I'll tell you who doesn't know, me. So now fast forward a couple of months. My friend is still going on about us trying to find this place, and I kind of didn't want to this time. Normally I'm one of the real adventurers in the group, but I just couldn't be bothered. I didn't want to lose my bike luxuries again because I've just lost them, but he persists, and I guess we had nothing better to do, so I say sure. Now, I remember the day that we're going to set off again. He said that he knows the exact place this is. You know why? He said he had a dream about it. Being young, I really bought into this and thought, you know what, this time we're actually going to find it. So, we're riding down the path this time. We're actually on the more concrete area which leads into the main part of the forest, and we were going really quick. Next thing I know, I'm hitting the ground hard. My hands are stinging and something was off. I realised that I've crashed on my bike. I'd stupidly tried to go off onto what appeared to be a more flat part of the path, but I've gone straight over a big stone and ended up getting some cuts on myself. I didn't worry too much about it though. I was sat down for a while, and I tell my friends that they should just go on without me and that I need to get back home. I was young, but I was still quite concerned by this and ruining my clothes. I didn't want to get blood all over them. I know I have to get back to my mum. Now my friends, being the great friends they are, say sure and head off without me and leave me there. I look at the bike and it seems a little bit stuffed at first. I can't get the wheels to turn, so I ended up just laying there for a while. Now that's when I noticed someone. There's an elderly woman approaching. She's coming from just beyond the tree line up to my right. I look ahead and see if my friends are there to confirm if they're seeing this too, but they aren't. They're long gone. I'm a little bit worried now and very hastily get up and start trying to make my bike move. I'm trying to get the wheels to work, but I just can't seem to do it. For some reason I had a feeling that she was coming to help me, but She gets a little bit closer and just stops, smiling at me. Now she has some of the most jagged and rotten teeth that I've ever seen before. It's like this person had never seen a toothbrush in their life. Weirdly, their clothes didn't seem too dirty, considering that she's just come from the forest and surely they should have some markings on them. She's wearing a kind of dark coloured dress, but it looks pretty immaculate. If I had to guess her age, I'd say she's probably about 70 or 75. I'm not too sure. I wave at her and don't get anything back. I then say hello, and suddenly, her expression changes, looking completely blank, almost like it's looking through me. Now that was creepy. I can't really make out much about her eyes because she has pretty bloodshot eyes, so I quickly get my bike, pick it up, and thankfully the wheels start moving while I'm walking. I look over my shoulder, and I can still see her there watching me. For some reason I wasn't overwhelmed with fear by this, as I know a lot of people might be. This is kind of uncharacteristic for me too, because often I am the scaredy cat, but not in this situation. I start pedaling slowly at first, but I then see that she's still there staring at me, and as you can imagine, I picked up the pace pretty promptly. Now I ended up getting back home, and my mum's very concerned about me. Annoyingly, she put this stinging stuff all over my cuts. I mean, it's probably antiseptic whatever, but my god did it burn like I've never felt a burn before. Honestly, it almost sent my whole body into shock how strong this stuff is. It was so much so that I'd actually forgot about what had happened until my mum asked again. I say I crashed over the stone, and then the lady come. Mum says, "What lady?" and asks me to describe her. And I explain everything that happened, and she looks at me kind of weird. She knows that there's no cars around there for miles. It's just the paths. You might get the odd truck, but it was very uncommon. She tells me that if ever I see that lady again, to come straight back and don't try and talk to her. I say, "But Mum, I couldn't even talk to her." I get the reply of, "I don't want to hear it." I'm then grounded and lose my bike privileges again. So it's starting to get quite irritating now. So not only are my friends out having this great adventure, I've crashed my bike on flat ground, hurt myself and got grounded again. I was pretty worried now because usually my mum does the 3 strikes and you're out kind of way of things. If I lose a bike again, I don't know if I'll see it again. So I'm pretty upset. Now eventually my mum does release me from her prison and I'm allowed to go out. And I catch up with my friends and ask them what happened. They then say that they still couldn't find it and I started laughing. They then ask why I'm not allowed on my bike and I explain and my friend says that's her. That's the lady who lives there. I say, "What do you mean?" He says, "The lady that haunts the house, you saw her." And I'm not buying any of it. I say, "The day I believe you is the day I see the house." And what happens? Nothing for the next 2 months, until eventually I get my bike back and it's time to go out once more. In the time without my bike, I'm actually super bored because I'm basically stuck indoors all day and I'm just watching the days go past. I did get some video games in, so I just killed hours on it, but it couldn't compete with being with my friends. Now, we decide that we're going to set out one last time to try and find this house. Again, I really don't believe it's there. I don't believe any of it's true, but my friend constantly goes on about it. So now, we get on that path once again, and this time I'm constantly scanning the ground. I'm very scared to go over another rock again and get hurt. It's not actually the feeling of crashing that actually bothers me, it's more the fact that I don't want to have a crash and get that stinging stuff on me. The thing was, at this point, even if we did find anything, I was sure to just lie about it, because I think, what's the point of telling my mom about what's happened if I'm only going to get grounded again? So I swear that no matter what happens, I'm not going to tell her anything. Now we were riding for miles and miles, and eventually my friend said, "Stop," and we all stop. He says, "Leave our bikes here." We take them off to the side and actually throw them into the bushes so people can't find them. They're pretty well concealed now, which is something we're all happy about. Now we get up and we start going through the woods on this little path. My friend is absolutely convinced and certain that this is the way that we need to go to be able to get away from everyone and finally find where this house is. He says, "This is it. This is what I found before." None of us really believed him, but I guess being gullible, part of us wanted it to be real. Now we walked for miles and miles, and we still don't seem to be getting any closer to anything. I tell him, "Really, is this actually a thing, or is it just a figure of your imagination?" He then says, "Be quiet." And I don't. I just keep on going until eventually, there it is. In a break in the trees, you can see an old white house. It kind of looked like an old English cottage, but slightly bigger. It certainly looked old and very abandoned. It was 2 stories tall, and looked like nobody had been there for as long as I had been alive, at least 5 times over. Now at this point I get a little freaked out, but my friend is persistent that we have to press forward to find it. We have to go in there. We have to know that it's real. I agreed, kind of getting more and more excited at this time. As we start to step towards it, a crow must have broke out of a tree nearby and it really made us jump. All of my friends are laughing at me for being so scared, but I don't know, I felt extremely on edge in this situation, and it's kind of like something I haven't felt before for a long time. Even working now as a ranger, I still haven't had that feeling. I think I was too on edge. I was too ready for something to happen. Now we go a little bit further ahead, and then I can see some kind of movement. It almost looks like there's a cat or something in one of the top windows moving round. It's all black, I can't see eyes, but I knew something was in there. I think maybe it's an animal. And we continue going forward. I don't know, I'm getting a really bad feeling about this, one of my friends says. But again, we say that we've come this far and that we need to figure out what this is. And so we press forward even more. Now eventually we get up to where the door was, and I, probably being the bravest at the time, decided to step in first. And this place smelled really weird. It was kind of like an old smell, one that I hadn't smelled before, and something smelled really bad in there. I didn't know what it was. I kept on and on searching for the source of the smell, but I really couldn't find anything. So that was something quite strange. I just expected either something to jump out at me constantly, or to see some kind of dead animal or thing there to make sense of the smell, but again, there's nothing. Now, I decided to go up the stairs to see what else is up there, and this place looks like it is from about the 1800s. There's no furniture or anything. There is a picture on the wall, but it's all faded off and you can't really see what it once was. I don't think it was a picture, but some kind of portrait, but it's gone now. I then see a big spider go up the wall, and I really don't like that. I'm looking for the cat though, and I can't find it. I think this is odd, so I continue my search. I was sure I saw something in here. Even if it wasn't a cat, I just had the urge to know exactly what it is and just figure out what was going on up here. Now, I end up going further ahead, and while my friends are down, I realise that there's an upstairs area. There are stairs that go up another level. I go up the stairs and I can see a suitcase. I don't see anything else there, and I decide that I'm going to open it up. I have to know what's in here. Even if it's bugs or something, I really want to know. As I go to open it, I hear a sound behind me. It's movement. I'm not bothered, I think that it's one of my friends, and I slowly turn around, and there I see it. A woman crouched in the corner, staring at me. I then realise this is a woman that I saw before, and she slowly smiles at me. I drop the suitcase down immediately. It startles me, but not her. One of my friends then joins me on the stairs and screams the second he sees a woman. Something about her didn't look real or human. The next thing I know, we're sprinting down those stairs. They felt impossibly long. It was almost like it had doubled in length. My other friends were also screaming now, and we all come flying out of the house, saying, "What was that? What on earth was that?" I say I don't know, and we start explaining to the others what we saw. One of my friends is constantly looking around, and he swears that he can see someone staring at us out of the window. We don't bother looking around. I mean, me and the guy who saw it, we just keep running. We were surprisingly fit, as we probably made it about 500 meters before slowing down again. We all stopped for a moment, now feeling safe that we're away from the house, saying, "What did we see?" No, none of us can agree on exactly what we saw. We keep looking around to where the house is, but weirdly we can't find it. I know that we run off and we're quite worried and disorientated, but we should be able to see the house, so it doesn't make sense why it's not there. I start to kind of lurch backwards a bit as I realise that the fear's really taken a toll on me. It's like my vision's gone a bit weird. We then start moving again. We start running as quick as we can, and we're trying desperately to locate our bikes. We eventually come back to the main path, but our bikes are nowhere to be found. Of course not. How could we possibly find it out here? How are we going to be able to differentiate it from the surroundings when everything looks the same? We didn't think of this at the time. I didn't even care about the bike. Now the thing that makes this suck is it's going to be a long journey back without the bikes, but we just can't find them. I do want to search for a bit longer, but my friends are all too scared, and we take off running again. We don't get too far as we're really tired now, and we have to start walking. What's worse is we've got about 2 hours of daylight now ahead of us. We're all discussing, running through the probabilities of what it was, and suddenly I get annoyed at the friend saying, "Why didn't you tell me that was there?" He says, "I can't know what's up there, I've never been in there before." We all look at him then, kind of annoyed, as if to say, "Well, why didn't you let us know that before?" He doesn't reply though. And eventually, we get to the part where we have to split ways. We all say goodbye to each other, and then watch my friends go off in different directions. I don't know why, I just felt the need to stop there for a second or so, just to try and figure out, or at least make sense of what had happened, but I can't really make sense of anything. I then think, God, my bike, this isn't good. I'm going to be in so much trouble. And I start to fabricate an excuse to my mum as to what's happened to my bike, so at least then maybe she won't be too annoyed at me. It was stolen, that's it. I'm going to tell her it was stolen. Eventually, after a 2-hour walk, I get home just before the sunset. My mum can see me without my bike and says, "What happened?" And "It was stolen, Mum. I think a kid's stolen it." Weirdly, she wasn't annoyed at all. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, honey. We'll get you another one. Dinner's ready." I'm really surprised, and I take my food and go and sit in my room to eat it. Now fast forward to all these years later, and even in my current line of work, I've never seen anything so strange, and I still can't really make sense of it all. I don't know what I could have possibly seen up there. I'm just glad that I wasn't the only person to have seen it, and somebody else did, because if it was just me, I probably wouldn't have believed it.